The kitchen still smells like him sometimes. I don't know if that's real or if I'm just hoping it is. 41 years of Sunday pot roasts will do something to the walls, I suppose. Paul used to lean against that counter right there, the one by the window, and watch me cook. Never offered to help, just watched, and I used to pretend that annoyed me. I'd give anything to be annoyed by him again. He passed 4 years ago November. Heart attack. He was raking leaves in the backyard, and then he wasn't doing anything at all. The paramedics said it was fast. People keep telling me that like it's a comfort, and I stopped explaining that it isn't. After he died, the house got very quiet. Not peaceful quiet, the other kind. My daughter Denise lived 40 minutes away, over in Fairview. My son Kevin had moved to Portland 2 years before Paul died, a job opportunity, he said, and I understood that, I really did. They were both grown, both had their own lives. I wasn't the kind of mother who expected her children to drop everything and come back. I'd raised them to be independent. I was proud of that. What I wasn't prepared for was how thoroughly they would take me at my word. The first time Denise called asking for money, it was 8 months after the funeral. Her voice was tight and careful in that way it gets when she wants something and knows she shouldn't want it. She said she and Marcus were behind on the mortgage. Just 1 month, she said. Just to get through a rough patch, she'd pay me back. I didn't hesitate. She was my daughter. Paul had left us comfortable, not wealthy, but comfortable. And what was I saving it for? I sent her $2,000 that same afternoon. She didn't pay it back. I told myself she would when she could. 6 months after that, it was Kevin. His hours had been cut at work. Could I help with rent until things picked up? I sent him $1,500. He didn't pay it back either. I told myself the same thing. Here's what I understand now that I did not understand then. I kept sending money because it was the only time they really called. Not texts, calls. Actual phone calls where I could hear their voices for more than 3 minutes. I knew, somewhere underneath all my excuses, that I was paying for those phone calls. I just wasn't ready to look at that directly, so I didn't. By the second year, it had become a kind of routine. Denise would call every couple of months. Kevin, a little less often. There was always a reason. The water heater, the car repair, daycare costs for Denise's kids, a gap between Kevin's paychecks. The amounts varied, but they never stopped. I transferred money the way other people pay utilities. It just became part of my monthly accounting. My neighbor Fran noticed before I did. She said over coffee one afternoon, "Wanda, do they ever just call to see how you are?" And I opened my mouth to say of course they do, and then I sat there for a long moment with my mouth still open and no words coming out. Fran had the grace not to press it. That was October. I thought about what she said for 3 weeks. And then Thanksgiving came, and I assumed I would be spending it with Denise and Marcus and the grandchildren, the way I had the year before. I had already bought a 12-pound turkey. I'd made the cranberry sauce from scratch, the real way, not the can, because my granddaughter Lily had asked me to last Easter, had said, "Grandma, yours is the best," and I had held on to those words like something precious. I texted Denise on a Tuesday to ask what time she wanted me over. She didn't answer until Thursday morning. Thanksgiving morning, the text came in at 7:42, and I saw it before I'd even put on my reading glasses, which meant I had to hold the phone at arm's length to read it. We're actually doing our own thing this year. Marcus's family is coming. It's going to be a lot of people, and honestly, it would just be easier. Hope you have a nice day. That was it. Hope you have a nice day. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The turkey was already thawing in the refrigerator. I could smell the cranberry sauce I'd made the night before, that particular smell of orange zest and sugar that I had always associated with family, with noise, with children running through the kitchen. I sat there on the edge of the bed and I thought, Marcus's family is coming. There was room for Marcus's family. There was not room for me. I called Kevin. I don't know exactly what I expected. I think I needed to hear a familiar voice. He answered on the 4th ring and I could hear road noise in the background, which meant he was in the car. "Hey, Mom, can I call you back?" We're on our way to Sarah's parents' place. Sarah was his girlfriend. I had met her once, briefly, at a coffee shop. "Of course," I said. "Have a good time." He didn't call back. I didn't really expect him to. I spent Thanksgiving alone. I made myself a plate from everything I'd prepared and I sat at the dining room table, the same table where we'd had 30 years of holidays, and I ate by myself. I left Paul's chair empty. I don't know why I did that. It seemed right at the time, and then it seemed unbearable, and I moved to the kitchen counter and finished eating, standing up. I did not cry until after I'd done the dishes. I think I was very deliberately saving it. What happened next is the part I am still not entirely sure how to explain, because it didn't happen all at once. It was more like something that had been quietly accumulating finally reached a weight I could feel. 3 days after Thanksgiving, Denise called. I thought, and I am embarrassed to admit this, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize, or at least to check in. Instead, she needed help with Christmas. Marcus's bonus had come in lower than expected, she said. The kids had big wish lists. She hated to ask. Could I do $800 this month instead of the usual $4? The usual $4. She said it just like that, as if we had a standing arrangement I had agreed to at some point. I said I'd think about it. I had never said that before. She paused for just a moment and then said okay, and there was something in that pause that told me she was recalibrating. She wasn't used to, I'll think about it. I sat with the phone in my hand after she hung up. I went to my desk and I opened the folder where I keep my bank statements. I am a methodical person. Paul always said I was the organized one, and I had records going back 3 years. I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad and I started writing down every transfer. It took me a long time. The numbers were not small. In 3 years, I had given Denise and Marcus a total of $23,000. Kevin, $11,000. I had told myself these were loans. I sat there looking at my own handwriting and I tried to remember even one conversation where either of them had mentioned paying me back. I tried hard. I sat there for a long time trying. I could not remember a single one. I put down the pen. I looked at the empty chair across the desk, the chair where Paul used to sit when we paid bills together, and I thought, what would he say right now? Paul was a gentle man, but he had limits. He would have said something by now. He would have said something a long time ago. I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about the cranberry sauce, which I had eventually thrown out because I couldn't eat it all by myself and I didn't know who to give it to. I thought about Lily, who was 8 years old and who I had not seen since Easter. I thought about the way Denise had said, the usual $4, like I was a subscription service. And something shifted. I can't describe it more precisely than that. It was quiet, and it was final, and it felt less like anger than like clarity. I did not call Denise back about the $800. Instead, I went online and I canceled the automatic transfer I had set up 18 months earlier. The one I had set up because Denise had said it would be easier than me remembering to send it manually. And I had thought at the time that I was being helpful. I sat there with my cursor on the confirm cancellation button for a while. Then I clicked it. For Kevin, there was no automatic transfer. I'd been sending his money manually. But I opened a new note on my phone and I wrote his name at the top and I wrote, "Not this time." Then I closed the laptop and I went to bed. I slept better than I had in months. I'm not sure what to make of that. I want to be honest here because I think honesty is the only thing that makes any of this worth telling. I did not feel righteous that night. I felt scared. I lay in the dark and I thought about all the ways this could go wrong. What if Denise stopped speaking to me entirely? What if I never saw the grandchildren again? What if this was the thing that broke us past fixing? These were not small fears. I had watched other women lose their children over smaller things. I knew that love and proximity are not the same thing, and that you can do everything right as a mother and still end up eating Thanksgiving dinner alone at your own kitchen counter. I knew that already. I had learned it the hard way. But I also thought they are already treating me like I am not there. I am already alone. Stopping the money isn't going to make me more alone than I already am on a Tuesday afternoon in a house that smells like a man who has been gone for 4 years. I thought that for a long time. Then I went to sleep. The next morning, I got a text from Denise at 9:16. "Hey, did something happen with the transfer? It didn't come through." Not, "How are you?" Not, "I'm sorry about Thanksgiving." The transfer didn't come through. I looked at that text for a while, Then I set my phone face down on the kitchen table, and I made myself a cup of coffee, and I drank it standing at the window looking out at the backyard where the oak tree Paul planted the year Kevin was born had finally gotten big enough to give real shade. I stood there and I drank my coffee, and I watched a squirrel do something absurd in the branches, and I let myself feel the particular quiet of a morning that belongs entirely to you. Then I picked up my phone and I wrote back, I canceled it. I think it's time we talked, but I'm not ready to do that today. I'll call you later this week. She started typing immediately. I could see the 3 dots. They appeared and disappeared several times. Whatever she was writing, she kept stopping and starting over. Finally, okay. I called Kevin that afternoon. He answered right away, which surprised me. I told him what I'd told Denise, that I wasn't sending money this month, that I thought we needed to actually talk. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Mom, are you okay? Did something happen? And here's the thing that broke me open a little. Right there on the phone, he sounded genuinely concerned. Not about the money. About me. It was the first time in longer than I wanted to count that he had asked me that question and meant it. I'm fine, I said. I've just been doing some thinking. About what? About how I've been handling things since your father died. About whether it's been good for any of us? Another silence. Then can I come see you this weekend? I said yes. He came on Saturday. He drove 6 hours and he brought me flowers, which he'd never done before in his adult life. Carnations from a gas station, still in the cellophane, a little squashed. They were the most thoughtful thing anyone had brought me in years. We sat at the kitchen table and I made the pot roast and we talked for 4 hours, real talking. The kind we hadn't done since Paul was alive. He told me things I hadn't known. He told me that after Paul died, he hadn't known how to be around me because my grief reminded him of his own, and he hadn't known how to handle that. He said he'd pulled away and then kept pulling away because he didn't know how to come back. He said he was sorry. He said it more than once, and each time he meant it. I told him things I hadn't said out loud before either. I told him about Thanksgiving. I told him about the cranberry sauce. I told him I was lonelier than I'd known how to say. We both cried a little. Not dramatically, just the kind of quiet leaking that happens when you've been holding things for too long. I asked him directly about the money. I asked if he'd thought about paying any of it back. He said yes. He'd thought about it, and he was ashamed that he'd let it go on as long as he had. He said he would start paying me back, a little at a time, and that he understood if I didn't want to send anything more. I told him I wasn't asking for repayment. I wasn't, truly. But that what I needed was to know I mattered to him as a mother, not as a bank account. He said I did. He said that clearly and without hedging. I believed him. I still do. Denise was harder. She called on Sunday, the day after Kevin left. She opened with logistics. Can we sort out the transfer situation? And I told her I wanted to have a real conversation first. She said she didn't understand what I meant. I said I wanted to know how she was. I wanted to know how the kids were. I wanted to know if she'd thought at all about how I spent Thanksgiving. There was a long pause. Then she said, somewhat stiffly, that she hadn't thought it would be a big deal, that I'd seemed fine. I asked her when she'd last asked me if I was fine. Longer pause. She didn't have an answer, and I didn't fill the silence for her. I had spent 4 years filling silences for people who were not paying attention. I waited. She said, I think I've taken you for granted. Those were her exact words, and I want to say them exactly because they mattered. It was not a full accounting. It was not an apology for the whole of what had happened, but it was true, and she said it herself, without me leading her there, and that was worth something. We talked for over an hour. It was uncomfortable the way real conversations often are. There were things she said that stung, and things I said that probably stung her back. But at the end of it, she asked if she could bring the kids over the following Sunday. She said Lily had asked about me, had asked specifically about my cranberry sauce, which made me laugh in a way I hadn't expected. I said yes. Of course I said yes. I made the cranberry sauce. I made it from scratch, with the orange zest, the way I always did. Lily ate 2 servings and asked me to teach her how. I stood at the counter with my 8-year-old granddaughter learning something by heart that I had learned from my own grandmother, and I thought, this is what I was protecting. Not the money, not the principle of the thing. The transfers did not restart. Not the way they were. Denise and I talked about it plainly, eventually, the way adults talk about things when they've decided to stop pretending. She and Marcus were genuinely stretched thin, and I understood that. Life is expensive, and people make mistakes, and sometimes they lean too hard on the people who let them. I didn't want to be unmovable. I just wanted to be a person, not a resource. We worked something out that felt honest to both of us. It wasn't charity, and it wasn't an arrangement. It was family, functioning the way family is supposed to, with reciprocity, with presence, with the understanding that love runs in more than one direction. Kevin calls every Sunday now. It started the week after his visit, and it has not stopped. We talk for 30 minutes, sometimes longer. He tells me about his life, and I tell him about mine, and occasionally we talk about Paul, and neither of us has to pretend that's not still hard. The house is still quiet. I don't think that changes, not entirely, not after you've lost someone who lived in every room with you. But there is a difference between a house that is quiet and a house that is empty, and I am learning to feel that difference. The oak tree in the backyard is getting bigger every year. Paul would have loved that. I'm learning to love it for both of us. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately, not in any grand or philosophical way, just the plain, quiet version of it that you start to see clearly when you get older and you finally stop being afraid to look. What I did for Denise and Kevin for 3 years wasn't wrong because it cost money. It was wrong because I let it cost me something more important than money, and I did it willingly. And I told myself it was love. Maybe part of it was. But part of it was fear dressed up as love, and those two things can look identical from the inside. Here's what I know now. When you keep giving without any expectation of being seen in return, you don't just deplete your bank account. You teach the people you love that you don't require much, that you'll be there regardless, that your presence is guaranteed and your absence is inconsequential. I taught my children that for 3 years, one transfer at a time. I can't be angry at them for learning the lesson I kept repeating. That's the hardest thing I've had to sit with. Not what they did, what I allowed, the courage it took to cancel that transfer. I don't want to make it sound small, because it wasn't small. I lay in the dark that night, genuinely terrified. Mothers are not supposed to have conditions. That's what I'd always believed, or been made to believe. You love without reservation. You give without keeping score. And that's true, in the deep sense. I do love my children without reservation. But loving someone without reservation is not the same as funding their life without conversation. I confused those two things for a long time. What changed things wasn't the money. It was Denise saying, "I think I've taken you for granted." 4 words, plain and undefended. She said them herself. I didn't extract them. And Kevin driving 6 hours with gas station carnations still in the cellophane, that mattered more to me than any of the $34,000 combined. Because those things were chosen, they cost something real. Intelligence, to me, has always meant the ability to look at a situation honestly and revise what you believed when the evidence calls for it. I had to be intelligent enough to look at 3 years of bank statements and see them for what they were. I had to be honest enough to stop calling it generosity when it had become something else. And the strength, the part that came after the fear, that was the part I didn't know I still had. You spend enough years being the person everyone leans on, and you start to forget that you have a spine of your own. That night, I clicked confirm cancellation. I remembered. I'm not offering this as advice. Everyone's family is different. Every situation is its own thing. But if any part of this sounds familiar, if you've been sitting in a quiet house wondering when someone will call just to ask how you are, I'll say this. The people who truly love you will still be there when the conditions change. And the ones who weren't really there to begin with will tell you, quickly and clearly, exactly who they were all along. Lily asked me to teach her how to make cranberry sauce. That's what I'm holding on to. That's what was always worth protecting.